President Muhammadu Buhari, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and the Commander-in-Chief of the Nigerian Armed Forces, Your Excellency, the Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, our national leader, the Asiwaju of the universe, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed, Senator Tinubu, Your Excellency, the Governor General, the Governor of Governors, Governor Sheikh Yari, the members of the National Working Committee, Your Excellencies, the APC state governors across the states, both ingoing and outgoing, and those moving on, the governorship candidates who are here, distinguished senators, and in particular the leader of the Senate, Senator Ahmed Lawal, all other members of the National Assembly here present, the DG of the campaign, the zonal coordinators of the PCC, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and of course, my comrades, members of the 4th Estate of the Realm. They have the unique advantage of not doing primaries, nor do they have tenure, for as long as their camera is working. Mr. President, this afternoon, we are this morning, we are grateful and we thank you for accepting our invitation under 24 hours to attend this all-important meeting. Even we who operate at subnational level, or those who still operate at subnational level, we know challenges that you face in moments like this. Combining your responsibility as the president of our country, dealing with day-to-day governance issues, and at the same time in recognition of the fact that we are in a democracy and you are seeking renewal of your well-deserved mandate, you've had to manage your schedule in a way as to create time for this kind of interaction. Mr. President, we take your support, your encouragement, we do not take it for granted. And by the special grace of God, it is our prayers that God will reward your inner intentions with victory whenever the election is held. Mr. President, I thought, with due respect, sir, that in the course of going around this country, 36 states and the FCT, we saw very fanatical supporters, very ordinary people, some of them even looking underfed, but they are inspired by your leadership. They have hope. They believe that with 4+4, their life will change. And on the basis of their enthusiasm, their love for your person, and their confidence in our party, they troop out in millions across the states to be part of the rallies. Unfortunately, Mr. President, some of them got suffocated at various rally stadia. I think I'm just told now that in Port Harcourt, we lost about 15 fanatical supporters. We experienced some 8 or 7 persons in Taraba State and a host of other states where we had huge turnout that overwhelmed the facilities that were on ground. I think in moments like this, Mr. President, it is only right and fitting that the least we can do to acknowledge and to pay respect to their memory is to respectfully invite Mr. President and indeed all of us to rise to observe 1 minute silence in memory of our departed supporters. May their soul and the soul of the faithful departed rest in perfect peace. Mr. President, I want to start this morning by congratulating you for providing leadership as the Chief of State, because you did not suspend governance. But side by side with that, Mr. President, you travel around the 36 states and even the FCT. I do not know if any other one of us here, myself inclusive, who can say he visited 36 states. Try as I had, I failed in Akwa Ibom, and I think I failed in FCT. I passed all my other marks. Yeah, I failed in Bayelsa, but I got A+ in Rivers. But Mr. President, you got A+ across the 36 plus FCT. Everywhere you go, you were looking stronger, more bolder, more articulate, and there were no contradictions about the message. Whatever you said in one state was complemented by your statement in subsequent states. And for those enemies of peace who didn't wish us well, nothing had shocked them more than your personal leadership by example throughout those campaigns. Let me also confess that I learned something firsthand going with you to those states, that it is possible to deliver your message right to the target without even bothering to measure the name or names of anyone else. Some of us were not able to do so, and we will not be able to do so. But I think that is to your credit, that even all the insult, undeserved, all the mud thrown at your person, you prefer to leave them because your judges are not your opponents. Your judges are the people of Nigeria. That, for me, is statesmanship at its best. And I hope that my other colleagues have learned something from that. I have learned something. I don't know when I will practice it. But for now, I think all of us cannot have the same tactics. But I am humbled by what I've seen working with you at close range. Mr. President, like everyone expected, as a governing party with huge support base, we were determined not to fail our supporters and those who believe in your leadership and who believe in our party. We mobilized men and women, young and old, to ensure that on Saturday, the 16th of February, that all our polling points were manned by men and women who are capable, competent, and passionate about our party to function as agents of our party. Every logistic that we thought they would need, from pure water to ice cream, we try the best we can to encourage all those involved in election management to provide these facilities, so that the voting process and the vote casted are protected and counted on election day. We did what is expected of a responsible political party. Mr. President, you reminded us that it is not fair, it is not morally right to deploy young men and women for 24 hours or even more and not give them something to eat or something to drink. In line with your commitment to fairness, we did all of that. Unfortunately, as Fela will say, in the case of Fela, he talks about government magic. But in this case, we saw INEC magic. Gradually, as if it is a joke. We woke up at about 2:30 a.m. People were calling one another to say, have you heard it? That the worst has happened. INEC has postponed the elections by 1 week without adducing convincing reasons. Mr. President, if we, as party leaders, and our people as voters, were as shocked as they have expressed in print and electronic media and in various conversations in various social centers and even Mama Put. We only need to imagine how you felt, the pain in your heart and the shock and the disappointment that you have already expressed as the president of this country, who is determined to ensure that Nigeria have an enjoyed free and fair election. But like I saw some people, as a believer, moments like this can be described as times of temptation. Those who are weak-hearted will give up. But those who are determined will recognize that nothing good that comes easy. Whoever participated in this act that was determined, that was designed and intended to frustrate our party and to frustrate our members and to discourage the electorate, Mr. President, I believe it is our collective duty to put them to shame by ensuring that the intervening period we have, that we use it effectively to reassure Nigerians that one setback cannot be the end. Our commitment to democracy is not negotiable. Our people's determination to elect Mr. President is not at the mercy of any institution, including INEC. And many have resolved that the more INEC try to frustrate our people, the more determined we are. And so we have called this meeting today, first to reassure Nigerians that we are determined that the free and fair election must take place. Degesama Harikasa. And we are not going to compromise on that. Mr. President, I had the opportunity, along with party leaders of the other political parties, to attend what was meant to be a briefing for INEC to share with us what is it that went wrong, such that they had to cancel an election only 6 hours before, no, in fact 5.5 hours before it was due to commence. Because they announced at 2:30 a.m. and polling was supposed to have begun at 8 a.m. That is nearly 5.5 hours. The more I listened to the explanation from INEC chairman, the more disgusted I was. But if it's just about disgust, I can manage my feelings. It raises my suspicion about who is behind this agenda. I hate to discuss hidden agenda. When people talk to me about hidden agenda, I always say I prefer to discuss the open agenda. When the hidden agenda comes to the surface, we will deal with it. But, Mr. President, it will be a huge, huge risk to ignore all of the speculations that have surrounded the INEC sudden, unjustified postponement of the election. Because, Mr. President, this date, 16th of March, was fixed, of February, was, I want to be sure that you are listening. I always use it to test. APC, Dekakasa Harisama. APC, next level. INEC on their own rolled out this timetable about 2.5 years ago. On their own. All we were expected to do was to comply. It was not imposed on them. It was not suggested to them. It was their own voluntary decision. And it is difficult to accept that for all of those periods, that INEC did not know what ought to be where, at what time, in order to guarantee free and fair election. So the more explanations INEC chairman did, the more questions that were left unanswered. Number one, INEC talks about the huge population of Nigeria that did not develop in 2015. And for me, that was provocative. As a professor, he ought to have known, not only the population of Nigeria, he ought to have known that even between the last press conference and today, more Nigerians have been born and some have taken off. Number two, he talked about huge challenges managing elections such as this in Nigeria. I said, rubbish. From 1999, even the military conducted an election that ushered in President Olusegun Obasanjo. There were lessons to learn from that. In 2003, we conducted elections. Of course, many will say it was characterized by rigging, but election nonetheless. In 2007, we did another election. It was massively compromised. And the winner of that election had the courage and the good heart to admit that the process that produced him was not good enough. Thereafter, there was an attempt to reform the electoral process. And by 2015, another election was conducted. It wasn't the best in the world, but it represents a substantial improvement over 2011 election. I talk about substantial improvement because our brother from Rivers, we realized that their own professor could not read the sole result sheet because they had over-manipulated it. Our brothers in Delta, we remember that each time they hear the result from the North, they top up the result from Delta. Our brothers from the East, we remember how many times they vote their result sheet. But because God had decreed and affirmed that you shall be the winner, all of those imperfections were not enough by themselves to change the outcome, which is why we are here. So one had expected, but 19 years down the road, the INEC leadership had the opportunity to study and to improve on the performance of his predecessors. As it turned out, this is not the case. Mr. President, as we speak, we have questions that we see what INEC to answer to. Because for election to be free, fair, and credible, the man with the key responsibility, the institution, is INEC. Mr. President, we have conveyed to INEC for them to reflect on the need to move some officers who have stayed too long in particular locations as to become part and parcel of the establishment in those locations, and therefore may not be able to conduct free and fair elections. We have pointed out some resident electoral commissioners who have become so comfortable in their new residences that they are in bed with the state authorities in their respective states. In the past, when issues like this are raised, and particularly when they can be proven, INEC leadership in the past is known to have quietly used administrative mechanisms to change and to redeploy. This INEC insists. The more you complain about a compromised officer, the more the INEC leadership is determined to keep the officer. I will only give one example. An officer in the South-South, in a training program for INEC, choose to use the governor's special assistant to superintend over the training process. How can our brothers and sisters in Akwa Ibom State have confidence when the process, the recruitment, the training, the deployment of the ad hoc staff is done between the INEC rec and the government of Akwa Ibom State? What we are expected to do as a people is to point out anything that we see that we think will be unhelpful and respectfully draw the attention of the appropriate authority. As we speak, that problem persists. Number three, from all we have now known, I can put my hand on the Holy Quran that INEC leadership knew that they were going to postpone the election. They shared this information with the People's Democratic Party and advised them not to waste their resources, while pretending to us that they are on top of the situation. Anytime you raise observation, they are on top of the situation. But actually, as we now know, they were on top of this arrangement that was meant to create confusion across the country. I think INEC deserves to make explanation to us, not because we are a governing party, but because we are a major player. Whatever information INEC conveyed to PDP, they ought to have conveyed it to us. And Mr. President, what INEC is doing in collusion with PDP is to get PDP to be shouting the word INEC chairman removed, the word INEC chairman all sort of fake attack, that the word INEC chairman go. If you ask me, I will say, as APC chairman too, I second secondus. I have no difficulties in seconding secondus to have a new INEC chairman. If that is what we need to have a credible election. But this is fake. It is a fake posturing. Because in truth, when I listen to secondus talking about removing the INEC chairman, I listen to PDP rep at the briefing, Chidioka, and he was busy commending and congratulating INEC for the courage. If we commend people for courage, for canceling what was meant to be, what do we do when they are successful? So all of this shows the contradictions and internal delay. Mr. President, it will be such a tragedy if at a ruling party, we cannot complain of being rigged out. And yet all the early warning indicators are there that this INEC leadership is up for a game. Number two, and this is more worrisome, there are strong suggestions that there are elements in INEC that are working with anti-democratic forces to gradually, week after week, move on to a situation where elections may become impossible having regard to the provisions of the law. In which case, those anti-democratic forces that are calling for interim government will appear to be winning gradually. Mr. President, it is time for us to assert the authority of state and direct INEC to do what they must do. And they don't do it, they must be persuaded to understand that there are huge, huge consequences. Whoever will preside over Nigeria must do so on the basis of one man, one vote. Those who want shortcut to power must be identified and flushed out. Mr. President, the primary purpose of today's meeting is not to lament all of the incompetencies of INEC, the mischief that we have seen, the collusion in many quarters, and the double speak that characterize their briefings. Much more important than that is that we have called this meeting to give our people hope and renew our commitment to democracy, our renewed commitment to free, fair, and credible elections. And the way forward for that is that we must now go back with the additional cost that it entails to renew the campaign. And again, INEC wrong decision to attempt to amend the law through mere administrative pronouncement, namely to the effect that campaigns are frozen. Mr. President, INEC is not in a position to make laws. The laws made by our parliament are superior to the opinion of INEC chairman, with all due respect to his office. The extra provisions of the law is clear. When you postpone election, and it has happened before, the law says you are entitled to renew campaign up to 24 hours before the date of election. It didn't say that you will stop election on the 15th of February, regardless of when the election will actually take place. When elections stop is determined by when it is expected to commence. Therefore, as a law-abiding party, we will proceed to re-energize our members, to renew the campaign, and to encourage them to come out in huge numbers. Because PDP being professional in election rigging, they know that, and I'm sure Amechi can share this with us, they know that.
He's not a member of PDP, sir.
No, he withdraw from past experience. From past experience. He has always told us now, he's been very honest about it. He's a Catholic. He confesses like, even though he's sometimes he confesses to people who are not priests. No, the point I'm making is, you know that when you have a low voter turnout, that is when election rigging is most easy. and voter turnout and voter apathy can result from the confusion. If at our level we are sufficiently disturbed, what will be the fate of the ordinary man? I think we need to remind them across the country that election has been scheduled and they should have trust, they should have faith, they should remain determined to vote. The process of doing that will require that we return the campaign for between now and Thursday this week. And Friday is not the campaign day. To ask us as a political party not to go out, the members, our people would have forgotten, so would have assumed that, look, I'm not sure what these people want, and the result could be very, very low turnout. That is not good for a party that has huge support base. It can only be good for a party that is not sure of its level of grassroots support. So without consulting INEC, we are proceeding, and we are ready to meet them in court because they cannot, by administrative fiat, amend or distort extra provisions in the relevant Electoral Act. And those laws are not secret to INEC. Number 3, sir. INEC has spoken to specific benchmarks. Oh, number 6. Yeah, somebody told me, I think it was God who told me, that you are very smart, Erufai, but not in numbers. Today you have proven him wrong. You are proving him wrong. You know, I thought I might tweet the file so that. Okay. So you have to quantify the losses for us so that we can make our claims. But just to say, sir, that INEC chairman briefed us of some of the things that they need to do day by day up until Saturday when elections will take place. My people say if a man or a woman has been caught on adultery and he says, I will do it again, it has to be wait and see. You can no longer assume it. INEC, having violated our confidence, they now must earn it or re-earn it and sustain it every inch of the way. So we are going to write to INEC to demand a small meeting, not a meeting of 1,000 people in a conference hall, face-to-face, to speak to specific details. 1, we have been told that they will configure the card reader. And we are told they are about 180,000. Now there are 2 issues. INEC, have you started? When will you finish this reconfiguration? Number 2, if they are 180,000, it means the extra is only, since we have 176,000 polling points. If INEC, no, 176. If INEC has 180,000 card readers, it means the surplus is only 4,000. Is INEC assuring us that from their own projections and from their past experience across the country that the failure rate of card readers is only approximately 1% or 2%? What is the basis for making allowance for only 4,000? Over 1 in 25,000. 1 in 25,000. Now you come from a state where every other person is a professor, so I believe you. So, is this based on past experience?
Mr. President, from what that we now know, in some states, INEC materials had been distributed. Some people have cited some of the result sheets. Some have cited some of the ballot papers before they ordered them to stop. Now my question, having cited a copy or a sample of the ballot papers and of the result sheet, what is INEC doing differently to ensure that those who already have seen those samples will not go to Trans-Amadi layout to go and try to print a sample of the ones that they have seen? I bet you why you say, did I mention your name? You know, the Igbos say that hori hori tears trouser. Now, this horrid effort that INEC has promised to make to ensure that everything is done, are they able to assure us that some of the things that happened last Friday that they have taken care? For example, sir, the voting materials meant for Benin, for Edo State, were delivered to Enugu State. The one meant for Delta State were delivered to Edo State. This is not a weather issue. This is not, I don't know how I know what to explain that. This mix-up is different from not being able to lift materials. It's lifting materials to wrong area. And Mr. President, having been victims of election rigging, we know that one of the things INEC had done before was to deliberately carry one voter register from one local government to another local government. By the time you track it, you will have lost precious time for election. So these and several other questions are begging for answer. And because of the way the interaction was conducted, once you make a comment, INEC makes his comment, the case is closed. Even if his comment raises more questions. And to the rest of our comrades, I want to just plead. We must not allow this last-minute shock to demoralize our members. We must plead with them, and I'm happy, Mr. President, his first reaction was to apologize to those who were coming out to vote for us, who traveled to far and near to be able to vote. They have incurred costs. We are not in a position to afford those costs to those APC voters. We need to renew the campaign, we need to renew the assurances, and we need to give them confidence that the next time we believe that these elections will take place. Mr. President, I also believe that because you are the chief of state, you are the president, you have dual responsibilities. One is to ensure that any institutions of state that has misbehaved, anybody that is involved in that act, particularly actions that could clearly weaken the fabric of our democracy, Mr. President, you have a duty to trigger the process that will compel everyone involved in all of this to account. We cannot be helpless. Because at the end of the day, all fingers will point at you, even as innocent as you are. I want us, we'll also use today to review what has happened in the various states, what you observed, but that will not be why the media men are here. But on my part, sir, when, as they say, when the going get tough, that is when the tough get going. I am much more determined that our message to the Nigerian people, we must revive it. We must insist that these elections are conducted properly. Those INEC recs that have been compromised, we will impress on the INEC leadership that they do not have a right to impose a corrupt or compromised INEC rec or EOs on us. When sufficient doubt has been raised on the character, the integrity of a referee, no responsible match authority will impose that referee on the players. We don't care where anybody is posted to, but INEC has the discretion to move people around. Mr. President, once again, I want to thank you most sincerely from the bottom of my heart, and join my NWC members to welcome you to our rather not too nice a hall, befitting of a president to sit. And I'm hoping that the VP will have a conversation to see how we can have a better hall in the future. And but just to say that you'll be here physically. You don't look at the president face in a moment like this. I'm sure our party people seeing us around the country that you are here to discuss matters arising from the postponement is just the beginning of reawakening them, of giving them confidence that they should come out on Saturday, God willing, to come and vote. On behalf of the AWC, we welcome you to APC headquarters. You are welcome, sir.